Hey everybody, it's Murgle, and today they released Mythic Plus dungeons, they've released World Bosses, we got Nithog here to kill, and they released the Emerald Nightmare Raid. So, I'm gonna tell you everything you need to know about Mythic Plus, because there was a lot of confusion in my guild, and I remember doing a couple of these from the beta. So, I want to go over it, kind of how they work. So, as you can see, I've got a Mythic Keystone here. The way you obtain your first Mythic Keystone is you're going to do a normal Mythic run. You're going to do any kind of Mythic dungeon on normal, and you will receive Mythic Keystone. It won't necessarily be for the dungeon you just ran. So I ran Violet Hold, and as you can see, my Keystone is Court of Stars. I highly doubt you can get Court of Stars unless you're attuned, so that just might be a little something too, but I am attuned and I did get it, so that's probably a factor, and you probably can't get Arcway or Court of Stars unless you're attuned to that point. Now, as you see, it says Mythic plus 2, so the first run I did was a normal Mythic dungeon, and now I have the capability of turning it up to plus 2, which is a more difficult run of any Mythic dungeon. The monsters become stronger, they get more HP, things like that. And they are timed once you do these Mythic Plus dungeons. So it's kind of like mixing a challenge mode with a really difficult dungeon. At some of the really high levels, the only real capable way of doing it is like having 2 tanks or 2 healers. It does get immensely challenging at those higher ranks. And yes, very difficult. So what you do with this Keystone is, if I was to get a group together, I would go to Mythic Court of Stars, and I would enter the instance on normal Mythic. There's a thing called a Font of Power, and it's right there at the beginning of the dungeon. If you did challenge modes, you'll recognize it. It looks similar to that, and I will click on it, put my Keystone in it, and then hit Activate. And what will happen is it'll start the Mythic dungeon, the timer will begin, and you have to clear a certain amount of monsters. Again, like a challenge mode, you have to clear so much of the monsters, and you have to kill all the bosses. After completing it, if I'm in the time frame, you get a loot chest at the end of the instance, regardless of if you're in the time frame. So if you failed your Mythic time frame, don't just leave. You can still get loot at the end of it, but you won't get an upgrade to your Keystone. It'll become depleted. If you completed it within enough time, it'll go to the next level. So in this case, it's Mythic level 2. If I completed it with enough time, it would become a Mythic level 3 Keystone. And that's how they work. As long as you complete it within time, you'll get an upgrade to your Keystone. If not, then your Keystone will do the depletion thing, and the way you undeplete it is you can do the same dungeon again with the same Mythic Keystone, but this time you won't get any loot, but you can still upgrade your Keystone if you complete it fast enough. So if you complete it fast enough the second time around, then you'll get your Mythic level 3 Keystone. And then it goes on to Mythic 4, Mythic 5, Mythic 6, and there is skins for your artifact like that. They're really nice skins, but you have to do Mythic plus 15, and the highest on beta that I ever did was level 10, and I never saw anybody doing past level 10, because that's how challenging they are once you get up to that point. And I'm sure people did. I'm sure somebody was out there doing them, but I couldn't find any groups that were doing past level 10, and it's just that hard. So I can't imagine how extremely difficult like 15 would be. Definitely gets you those badass skins though, and very worth it. So at certain level points, like level 4, 7, and 10, they start getting Affixes, and an affix is like a negative trait for the Keystone, which makes your run more difficult. And I got a list of all the affixes here. Let me go over them. So at level 4, you can get anything from bolstering, necrotic, overflowing, raging, sanguine, skittish, teeming, or volcanic. And then there's 2 traits that are only available at 10 plus called fortified and tyrannical. So we'll go over them in order. Let's say I had bolstering, which it will get a new affix like every level. So once you hit 4, it gets an affix. Once you hit 7, it gets another. And then it's 10, it gets another. So they do become progressively harder. Not only do the monsters become stronger, you get these negative impacts. But your gear does get better with each dungeon reward. And hopefully you're prepared for it. But I'll go over all the effects. So bolstering. If the ability bolstering is active, when a monster dies, every monster around him gets a 20% health increase and a 20% damage increase. And it stacks, which is crazy, right? Let's say you got a pole that had like 10 little monsters and then one really big one. If you murder all those little monsters, that big one is going to get 200% health and 200% damage. So, oh my gosh, you're going to have to like plan it out so you don't burn everything instantly. You got to like get everything low and kill them all at once. You don't want to max out on all the little ads and then kill the big one. You're just going to wipe. So definitely, if bolstering's active, make sure to kill things evilly. Now, it doesn't affect bosses, it says. So if, let's say, you know, when if a boss summons ads of any kind, right? Any ad boss means that if you kill those ads, it's not going to affect the boss. So you don't have to worry about that. But if for the trash pulls, that can add up to a lot of damage. Necrotic Rot is the necrotic debuff, and it says here that potency of healing and absorption shields by 3% per stack end up going down. So every time your tank is hit with necrotic, they get a debuff that lasts 10 seconds and it stacks, and every single debuff adds up 3% per stack. So if you got hit 33 times, you would be getting 99% less healing and absorptions, and you could die really, really fast. It says it recommends that if you're in the higher level ones, you use 2 tanks, because necrotic needs to be channeled between both tanks so that they won't die. Because you get too many stacks, you're going to wipe. It's very, very bad too, because you can't really wipe in these. It's not, you gotta go fast, but you don't want to wipe in these Mythic Plus dungeons, because if you wipe, then you're losing all your time. You're better off just taking it slow and easy, as opposed to trying to burn through it and end up wiping because you're pulling too much. Next debuff here, Overflowing. It says whenever a healing spec player deals overhealing to a target, the target gains a healing absorption shield. So if you're healing too much on your tank, it would be really, really bad, right? And it absorbs the next 3 healing. All right, so it says here the healing absorption shield would absorb the next 3 healing. For example, if you overheal a target by 10,000, overflow will negate the next 30,000 healing. So it seems like whatever heal you do, it's times 3. And this is what WoWhead is saying. It says that if you overheal, it'll take 3 times as much healing to negate whatever you overhealed. That could be really, really bad, because you don't want your tank not being able to get heals. So if overflowing is active, make sure as a healer you're paying attention to not overheal. Raging. Raging at 30% health, they deal 100% damage. So you don't want to burn down ads in groups with this effect, because it causes enemies, any enemy, to enrage at 30% health, dealing 100% damage. Very, very important that you focus on a single target as opposed to spreading out. That could not be good. If you're burning down the whole group, everybody's going to rage at the same time, and everybody's going to start doing 100% more damage. So when raging is active, take them down one at a time, not in groups. Sanguine. Whenever a non-boss enemy dies, a pole of sanguine ichor forms at its location, and it heals enemies, or it deals damage to players if they're standing in it. Heals every enemy for 5% each second, and it deals 15% to any person standing in it at the time. This seems like one of the easier ones, right? Sanguine, very, very easy as long as you're just moving the monsters after you kill one at a time. Not hard to avoid. I would say this is one of the better affixes in terms of difficulty, because as long as it's as like you're capable of moving after something dies, you're going to be perfectly fine. Very, very simple one. If Sanguine is active, just move them out of the puddles. Same concept of don't stand in it, you'll be okay. Skittish. Now this is the one I remember being really difficult in the beta. I didn't know what it meant at the time, but now it makes sense. It's skittish affix, and what it means is the tank's threat is very, very bad. His threat is going to be lower. It's going to be like in vanilla when you couldn't do burst DPS because you might pull off the tank, and that's what this causes it to do. His threat is going to drop immensely, and if he's not pulling a super ton, he's not going to be able to keep it off DPS, especially if you're bursting. So you're going to have to be really, really careful and watching your own threat. Likely use everything that you can to drop threat. If you're Shadow Priest, make sure to fade. If you're a rogue and you're about to get threat, vanish. Anything to drop your threat, because you do not want to pull off the tank. You're going to have to waste time rezzing, especially if you... It might even cause a wipe of all the DPS if you guys are just blowing up. So this is a really big DPS one. If Skittish is active, take it slow. Don't burst that hard. Give the tank a few seconds to build some threat, and then you can keep moving. Teaming. Teaming is an effect that causes more mobs to spawn. It says in trash packs. So if a normal trash pack was of 3, it could have more adds than the 3 that are initially there. So teaming is going to make it more difficult, because some groups, in a lot of instances, I can name one specifically that was kind of difficult in Mythics, is that 6-pull group in Halls of Valor. I can't imagine if they added even more mobs to that pack, it could be really, really bad. So if teaming is active, it means you're going to have more mobs in every single pack, and it could come in a lot of difficulty if you don't have enough CC in your group. So if you got teaming active, make sure you have enough DPS and heals of some sort that can do CC before you pull, because you don't want to over pull and end up wiping again. So teaming is active, CC needs to be active as well. Volcanic here. Enemies in a volcanic dungeon will cause volcanic plumes to spawn beneath them. So again, this is just it seems to it gives 2 seconds. This seems like another really easy one, very, very easy to avoid. Every enemy seems to be able to cause a volcanic bomb underneath you, and it's like standing in the fire. If you see something underneath you, move out of it. It gives you 2 seconds to move, and it does 50% of the player's health, and that could do a lot of damage. It can occur during boss fights as well, and it says that a volcanic plume will occur every 10 seconds roughly. And that means every 10 seconds, just look to see if there's a big circle forming underneath you. And if there is, get out of the way, because it's going to kill you. Yeah, that's it. Just move out of it. Volcanic is probably one of the easier ones, again, to avoid unless you're getting stunned. Make sure to dispel any kind of stun or fear or anything that's going to possibly prevent you from getting in it. If you're a paladin, I would suggest, if you're stunned, do a bubble or something, because 50% of your HP could, instantly kill you if you're not topped off. And just make sure you're watching for that. It's volcanic means look at your feet. Now, there's 2 effects that it's called fortified and tyrannical. These can only occur on 10 plus mythics. So if your Mythic Keystone is 10 or higher, you can see these. And it's called fortified. Fortified means that all of the trash have 30% more health and deal 30% more damage. That's a lot, and that seems a lot worse. I'd rather have tyrannical than fortified, because tyrannical is the exact same thing, but tyrannical is only bosses. Bosses have 30% more health and deal 30% more damage. Which with bosses could be a really bad thing too, because a lot of bosses have one-shot abilities, and if they're not properly handled, so 30% more damage added to that can only cause a little more trouble in the end. And I'm thinking of specifically like the charge from the guy in Blackrook Hold. 30% more damage added to that is already a really powerful hit. So this one might make bosses a little more challenging, but I think for the most part, Tyrannical is much easier than Fortified, because 30% more health and 30% more damage on trash is horrible. It just sounds absolutely horrible. And yeah, I would much rather have the boss one. But that's what it is. These are explained again in WoWhead here. I will put the link in the description if you're curious and want to read it for yourself. I was just trying to summarize it for you guys as much as I could. And you can also see the appearances of your weapons. I knew that they were going to give really, really good ones if you could get the 15 plus, and they look amazing. So if you'd like to see those, the link will be in the description for you to look. And that's it. So again, real quick summary, just do a normal mythic dungeon, you'll get your keystone. The keystone will give you the next level for a random dungeon that it picks. At levels 4, 7, and 10, they become extremely harder with the addition of the negative effects on your group. Whoever has the keystone puts it in the font of power at the beginning of the instance, and that's all there is to it. If you don't make it in time, you can still get loot by finishing the dungeon. So, hope this was helpful. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.